Hello, hello. My name is Jess, and this is Patient POV. Um, First and foremost, apologize my voice as the intro is being recorded just after I'm getting over a little bit of a flu or cold. And so I apologize for that, but I am so excited to be here with you guys today. A few things before we jump in. First and foremost, we want to say congratulations to Elda, my service dog in training, as this week we got a certification in the mail of her first test being completed. If you are watching, you can take a look at that beautiful certification that's going to get put on the wall just above her bed. And it is Canadian Kennel Club has a test. And unfortunately, where I live in Ontario, we don't have any mandated certifications needed for service dogs. And so we are training my service dog Elda with her trainer to be at the highest level in Canada, which is the BC certifications. And so we did this test, which is the first test, and the trainer that I'm working with, she has a program basically where you go through this test first, and then you work to the next one. So we're working towards this next one, and she's almost got all the things trained up to everything. And so, um, yeah, we're super excited for her. And so stay on this journey with us because I will keep giving you updates on her. So that's Elda. This week, like I mentioned, I had a little bit of a cold and I was nervous. I've always been nervous to get a cold, but I had one, but I didn't end up in the ER. I'm always worried because my heart sometimes goes a little too tachycardic, but I didn't end up in the ER this week. So, yay, that is amazing. I do really think that my exercise rehab has been really helping, and that kind of just shows how it is helping. I stayed nice and calm and really took it easy this week, but I'm still very, very proud of that. And so one thing that I wanted to share with everybody was I mentioned a few weeks ago that I would be starting a survey. Every Sunday, I will be posting, hopefully every Sunday, I will be posting a question box where you can either give thoughts about anything chronic illness related, any stories you want to share, whether it's about appointments or just stories from the past about chronic illness or something somebody said to you. Or you can post questions. And so this past week, we had a few questions and stories, but one I really wanted to highlight in particular was a question that was sent in. And the question is, what are some ways to be more mindful and inclusive of our friends with chronic illnesses? And so some things that I came up with, and then our guest, Jen, I was able to chat with her about this question as well, and she gave some of her thoughts. So some things that I had mentioned was try not to be toxically positive with phrase like, it could be worse, or at least it's not, and then insert a quote unquote worse condition, because everything somebody with a chronic illness is going through is pretty brutal, and it's brutal in our own way. And we don't need to be comparing because things can sometimes suck in their own way. And so toxic positivity is something we can try to avoid. Um, Another thing is like, unless a friend has specifically said that if it's a group event, I won't be able to come just because of like immune system issues or social batteries or different things like that. Unless they specifically said that, keep inviting your friends to hang out with you. Even if they've said no or canceled multiple times, they, we still like to be included. And we're on that note, if we are saying no or having to cancel or reschedule or things like that, don't get mad or frustrated towards them. Like, we understand the emotions, but we're just as disappointed and sad that we can't go out that day. And so it's nothing against you. Just come have an attitude towards them of a little bit more grace, of an understanding of they're not doing this because they're trying to do it against me. They're doing this like canceling. They're doing that because they literally have no other choice because they're either exhausted or they're in pain or whatever they're going through. Um, Another thing is check in on your friends, see how they're doing, say hi. Even if you feel like you're the one who's always saying hi first, keep doing it. I know it's sometimes exhausting, but it's always nice to have somebody reach out. It can be very lonely in chronic illnesses. Um, so just keep saying hi. Um, Jen, who we're going to hear more about from today, um, she wanted to add that you can educate yourself. Either ask them how their chronic illness impacts their life or Google it. That was one of the most something that somebody said to me was, "Oh, I Googled your condition." I went, You care like you cared enough to try to do research yourself. And so, educate yourself, listen to them, be flexible, check in regularly. So that's a common one as well. Include them, be empathetic, respect their needs, and celebrate their strengths. So that was, we had some very similar answers as well. So just proves that those are some things that you could be doing. And then she also has a saying, which is be a spoon collector, not a fork giver. She has a really great post about spoon cutlery and a spoonie cutlery, and forks are external stressors, knives are traumas, whisks are agitation and overwhelming things, and then spoons are energy. And that's all a part of the spoon theory. And so if you want to hear more information about the cutlery analogy, um, head over to gracefully_Jen to see some of her posts because she has some really great posts about that. And I will repost that. She has a cute little drawing about the different types of cutlery. And so I'll post that on my story today, which is Sunday, February 18th. If you want to see it today, it'll probably be on until tomorrow afternoon. So that's Monday afternoon. Yeah, so like I said, Jen, so excited to hear from her. She has her own podcast as well, which is My Spoonie Sisters. And I was able to be featured on her episode, which that episode comes out. I was able to be featured on that podcast, and that episode comes out tomorrow on My Spoonie Sisters podcast. And yeah, thank you guys so much for supporting. If you have any questions, stories, or anything like that, head over to my Instagram. In the bio, there's also a link to a survey, which you can fill out at any time, but then I will always try to have the box of questions available every Sunday or so. And then it'll typically get posted the week later. Yeah, or you can DM me. That also works. Anyways, thank you guys for all your support. And don't forget to subscribe and write a review if you feel inclined to. And I hope you guys all have a great week ahead. Hello, hello. How are you today?
I am well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me and doing the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yay. So do you want to just jump right on in and just chat about who you are, your background, and kind of your health journey?
Sure. Yeah. So, hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Weaver, and I am the host of My Spoonie Sisters podcast and a content creator over on Instagram as well. Most people know me as Gracefully Jen, and I live with rheumatoid arthritis, pustular psoriasis, alopecia areata, and some fun stomach problems along the way as well. And, I do what I do because I want to support other people going through the things that I've gone through. I felt very alone when I was first diagnosed, and I never want anyone to feel that way. So that's why I do what I do.
Yay, yeah, that's amazing. And so could you just briefly explain what those conditions are and how they affect you in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. So, rheumatoid arthritis is an inflammatory condition. And a lot of times people think of that as your grandma's disease. And when I first started having issues, I thought so too. And at the time, I was 31 years old and No. It is not your grandma's disease. It affects, you know, your joints, but it also affects inflammation in other areas of your body. It can affect your heart, your lungs. And so there's so much more into play with that than a lot of people think. It's not just arthritis.
Mhm.
And so there's that one. The pustular psoriasis, that was actually brought on by an allergic reaction to a biologic I was on for my rheumatoid arthritis. And in 1% of people, you can have this reaction. And I was one of those lucky ones. And unfortunately, it's something I have to live with for life. It's it's very similar to psoriasis. The plaques are very different. So you get sores all over your body that are filled with pus. And it looks disgusting and it's very painful. So that was a fun journey that came on in 2017. And I thought I was already going through some bad stuff with inflammation. So that was fun. Alopecia areata, that is where your hair falls out. And that started this year. So we had just gotten back from a trip to Hawaii, and I was noticing that some of my hair was not there. So that's been a fun journey to find out that that's another autoimmune disease that it can affect people. And I'm starting to think my body just hates me.
Yeah, yeah, I've often said that as well. Yeah, but, before we jump right into, the rest of the questions and diving into kind of more of what you were talking about, one thing I ask everybody who comes on is there any current shows or movies or books that you're reading that doesn't have to do with chronic illness, just what are you into right now?
Oh, okay. So what I do typically depends on the time of the year.
Mhm.
I'm one of those kind of people.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I've just shifted out of watching all the Christmas movies to now I'm trying to find more of, you know, I don't know, spring type things. I'm a unique kind of person. I like things like murder mysteries, but I also love like Hallmark stuff. So,
Good combo.
um, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's nothing like finding out a good murder mystery. I don't know, but so I'm trying to think. I can't even remember the name of the one I watched the other day. It's fairly new, and it. Gosh, do you remember the movie Orphan?
Mhm.
Okay, so there is like a documentary type thing that came out that's similar to that.
Oh, okay.
And basically a family was trying to accuse the child that they had adopted as not being a child.
Oh, I've heard of this, yeah.
Ugh. Oh my goodness. Everyone out there, if you're into crazy things like that, please go find whatever it is I'm talking about. I can't remember the name, but it was really good and it's quite the windy story and I'm not gonna tell you the end of it, but it's crazy. These
And
people were nuts.
was it based on a true story?
Yes,
Yeah.
they were interviewing the man, so the father, and they were interviewing the girl as well.
Mhm. Wow, yeah,
And
okay.
yeah, it was
If you think of it, send me it, and I'll add it in the show notes description, for everyone who's looking.
okay, absolutely.
If you can find it.
Brain fog is one of my best friends. You know, I can tell you all about the thing I'm trying to tell you about, but I can't actually tell you the word. I do it all the time.
Yeah, no, I understand as well. I also, mix up words where I'll be like, "garage," and I'll say "microwave" or something like that.
Yes, I think my husband sometimes thinks I'm a little crazy because I'm looking straight at him, absolutely serious, and I'm trying to tell him something, and I can't figure out why he's not understanding what I'm saying. And it's probably because it does not make sense.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I know what I wanna say, but it's not coming out.
And I think I'm saying it, so I'm looking at you like you're crazy.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. So jumping in, you were mentioning a few things in there, but do you wanna just, speak specifically to the any challenges that you have faced either getting diagnosed or with your current day-to-day life challenges?
I think one of my biggest challenges was right from the beginning.
Mm,
It was the first time that I started noticing joint pain. It was only in my knee. It was in my left knee, and that
mm,
was in 2010. So I was 30 years old with 3 children in middle school, and I was used to being active with them, roller skating, rollerblading, bike riding, hiking, all the things. And all of a sudden, this aggravating knee pain was going on, and as quick as it came, it disappeared.
mm,
But then in 2011, it came again. And so, speaking with my family doctor, I said, something's not right. I don't know what's going on. And so, I think they did like an MRI, maybe a CT scan, an x ray, like, all the things that they always want to do. And they weren't seeing anything. And the pain just kept getting worse. And it was to the point where I couldn't keep up with the family when we were walking around, if we went on a family vacation. I'm lagging far behind. And it was waking me up at night. And so finally, my family doctor started doing some blood work. And he came back with, for those that are familiar, it was like an ANA panel,
mhm,
and he didn't like the numbers. And he said, there's something going on here. And at the time, what he actually thought was that I had a strep infection hiding in my knee. And I was like, what? That's a thing?
mm,
Well, apparently, when we've gotten things like that, our bodies don't always fight it off all the way. And so sometimes they will hide in the strangest of places. So he thought it was in my knee joint. And so I was on several months worth of antibiotics with no improvement. And so we were nearing, for those in the US, we were nearing Thanksgiving in November. And so all the holidays were about to start happening. And he wanted to send me to a rheumatologist because he said, I think there's more going on here than what I originally thought. It's time to go see a rheumatologist.
mm.
I think you have some sort of rheumatism, is what he called it. Well, because of the holidays and errors by some of his employees, they didn't get all of my files sent over to the rheumatologist's office. And so they were refusing to schedule me. So that was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
And so by the time everything got sent over that needed to be sent over, we thought, they booked me for March. And that was as soon as they could get me in.
Mm,
And when I went in March, the rheumatologist came in and he said, well, I don't have all your tests that I asked them to send over. Uh, I almost feel like I shouldn't even have you in here today. And as soon as he said that, I just burst into tears
mm,
because I was going to be sent away. And I didn't even live in that town. I had to drive a few hours to get there. So it was like, I just drove a few hours. I waited months. I'm in agonizing pain. And you're talking about sending me away. I just bawled.
mm,
And luckily he was finally like, okay, I'll do a check, so they check all your joints up and down and feel them, and they look for inflammation that they can feel, but he was missing a lot of the blood work and stuff that he needed. So ultimately he did start me on, one of the first medications that they typically try people on. They're called DMARDs. And yeah, but that first appointment, he actually sent me out with 3 pamphlets and said, "Well, I think you have one of these." And I felt defeated. I felt like I wasn't important, and it's like, "Wow, you're just gonna hand me pamphlets? You're not even gonna describe them to me?" So I feel like that was part of the hard stuff, but despite the pain, it was just the trying to get in there
mm.
and then feeling dismissed.
Yeah, no, for sure. And now I think there is a little bit of a misconception of American healthcare systems, because until I started speaking to some of you guys from the States, I always assumed that you had a problem, you could call up your doctor if you had private insurance, and you could just get in on an appointment within like a short waiting time. But that seemed like a decently long waiting period. Can you explain a little bit about that, the healthcare
Yeah,
system?
yeah, so, it used to be it felt like I had a problem, just called my doctor, they got me right in. And that can happen with your own family doctor once you're established,
Mm,
but once you need to see a specialist, oh my goodness, there's no telling. Right now, they want to have me go to, it's called OHSU. It's a lipid clinic, specialty clinic, in Oregon near Portland. And yeah, they are so booked out. They can't even get me in until March virtually or this summer in person.
Mm,
And it's January, and I was like, "What? Seriously?" But that seems to it's like they're having a shortage in specialists.
mm. Okay, very interesting. Yeah, good to know. And then on your day-to-day life, what would be some of the challenges you might face within your condition because of your condition?
Currently or in the past?
Um, why don't we do currently?
Okay, currently, my RA, my rheumatoid arthritis is fairly controlled. And so it's not as bad as it used to be. And so, a lot of times I wake up in the morning, I'm stiff and sore. I need to get my movement in. A lot of us, hear us and see us talk on Instagram about choosing movement. It is very important. It doesn't matter how much pain you're in. I mean, it does matter, but you have to find a way to move a little bit because if you don't, the pain is going to get so much worse.
Mm,
And so the first thing I need to do, this morning I got up, my knees really sore. I'm limping around the house and I was like, you know what? I gotta keep walking. So I was doing circles around my house, trying to stretch out my knee before this call, and that's just part of life. And I had to get used to it. For the psoriasis, that's been interesting. We think my medication is starting to not work anymore, and so we're in the midst of a change, which is actually not a bad thing. All my specialists are working together, and they said they think the best option for me at this point is a JAK inhibitor, and so we are phasing me out of my methotrexate and my Otezla, and we're going to switch over to Rinvoq because Rinvoq, I guess, can treat all of the conditions together.
mm.
And so I would be getting less side effects, less problems, and supposedly this is like the miracle drug. So my hope is that I will stop having these awful pustules on my hands that are driving me crazy because it's hard, you go to wash your hands and it really hurts because you
Mm,
have these sores all over. And one of my doctors described it as like a burn from the inside out because that's kind of what it looks like when you have a really bad breakout. And it feels like a burn. It's
mm.
almost like once you can finally get those to pop and all of that to drain, your skin starts to feel better. And so whenever there's a breakout like that, touching things, washing your hands, getting your nails done, it's not fun. It's not pleasant. It hurts.
Right. Yeah, no,
So
for sure.
that's definitely one of my biggest challenges. And of course, losing hair, that's not been fun. And so there's been a lot of tears over the last 4 months, but I don't even know if I can show you. There's some spots over here that I have like a half an inch of hair coming in. So, it's not fun when you take a shower and you're finding handfuls of hair and not sure why.
Yeah, no, for sure. That must have been scary as well. Trying to figure
Yeah.
it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just jumping back into what you were mentioning about the doctors and getting diagnosed, did you ever experience any what they call like medical gaslighting or feeling dismissed or anything like that? Whether it was because I know you mentioned it was because of like their errors of not sending things over properly, but was it ever because of like mental health, them saying it was mental health or anything like that?
Okay, so I probably have two examples that I can think of off the
Hmm.
top of my head. So that same rheumatologist that I was going to, he would not diagnose me for a year. And that's when I finally left his office. A year of just giving me medications, but not telling me what we were treating. And I can't even really describe it well because I mean, first of all, it's been a while. That was way back in 2011. Um, but it felt like I didn't matter to him. And and so finally I found that there was a rheumatologist in the same town as me, and he wasn't as recommended as the one that I'd gone to. But when I switched, I was diagnosed the very day that I went in for my first appointment. He was like, "I'm looking at all your labs, I'm looking at you, and you have rheumatoid arthritis." So, s so, I mean, just the lack of care and concern and not treating it the way he should have. But on top of that, the next thing that happened with that same doctor was one of the first medications he tried me on, I had an allergic reaction to it.
Mm.
And I wasn't even home. I was actually in the middle of nowhere. My parents live in a tiny town in the middle of the country, and we were visiting them. And I woke up that morning and I felt strange, but I wasn't sure why. And I went to walk up their stairs and go in the kitchen, and I was going to tell my husband that something felt off. And I went in, washed my hands. I was about to turn around, and things got strange. My vision got blurry. I couldn't speak. I went to touch him, and next thing I knew, I was on the ground, and they were picking me up. I had had a seizure.
Mm.
Never had one in my entire life. I had fallen, hit in my head. I cut my lip open. They carried me out into the living room, got an ice pack, and my husband quickly started looking up the medication I was on and all the possible bad reactions, and one of them was seizures. And so we called their office, and they began to argue with us, telling me to stay on the medication.
Oh my.
And he said, "It's really important that we get your inflammation under control. You need to stay on this." And he's like, "Besides, you have epilepsy. Uh, isn't that why you had this happen?" And I was like, "Since when have I ever had epilepsy? I've never been diagnosed. I've never had a seizure in my life. Why do you think this?" It turns out there was a medication I was given for migraines that treats epilepsy.
Oh.
So the rheumatologist, he just made a snap decision that, "Oh, she takes this, she must have epilepsy." And so I did feel like there was gaslighting going on there because he was not listening, he was not taking me seriously, and we were like, we're not taking this."
Right.
We threw it away, and the next appointment, I said, "What's the next option?" Because I refuse to take that. "I disagree with you. And I'm not taking chances."
Mhm. No, for sure. That must have been so scary for sure. Um,
Terrifying.
yeah, and especially being in the middle of or not close to any hospitals, that must have been quite scary.
Yeah, it's spring break. They did have like one like little family clinic in town, but it was closed down for spring break. Like everyone pretty much closes down and leaves that town and they go and do fun things for spring break. So it was one of those, do we drive 2 hours to take me to an ER, or, do we just kind of watch me and see if I'm okay? And
Mhm.
we just kind of aired on watching me, and I was fine after that because I stopped taking the medication.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No,
yeah.
for sure. And then, I know you mentioned when you first started getting diagnosed, you had kids, who were like young, and I'm wondering how your support system had changed, how having children, in the mix of having all these chronic conditions, how that went and how it changed over the course of getting diagnosed,
Yeah,
dynamics
it
and
was
whatnot.
yeah, my kids, they definitely knew what was going on because, they were middle school age, and so we were honest with them. What was hard was I started to feel a very big lack of support.
Mm.
Um, I actually had a friend tell me that she couldn't handle being friends with me anymore because she had gone through a severe loss of a husband that had like a disease that took his life, and she was his caretaker, and it was very hard and scary on her, and so she couldn't handle being friends with someone that was sick. Sorry, I just had a crazy cat walk by, so if you heard that, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Uh, and so that was heartbreaking, because you're going through such a hard time, and typically we lean on our friends and family, and we didn't have family that lived nearby. And so to have a friend tell me she couldn't handle being my friend, that was very difficult.
Mhm.
But then there were other friends that stepped up, people that would help out with the kids if I needed it, and check in on me. I had friends that went with me to appointments, and yeah.
Yeah, no. And then, your children understood what was happening, um,
Mm.
and how did they cope, if I can ask?
It's interesting, you can raise all your children the exact same way, but they all have different personalities, and I always tell people that, so I had one child that was always super, super concerned and always checking in on me and bringing me a blanket or bringing me an ice pack, all the things. Uh, and one kid that, he was living his life, interested in girls, but he also has a heart of gold. And so sometimes, it would occur to him that I'm not doing okay. Um, but the rest of the time, being a normal, selfish child, wanting to hang out with all the girls and do all the things. And then one child that she was just always kind of in her own little world, doing her own little things, and that was, I mean, it's fine. They all have different personalities, and the last thing I wanted was a bunch of attention anyway. I didn't want to take away from their lives. I wanted them to still have a normal life and not feel like they needed to worry about me. I wasn't dying. I was doing my best to not show how I felt all the time. But there were a couple family trips that were rough in the beginning. We have some family photos that everyone likes to tease me about of when my husband finally said, "Okay, that's it. You can't keep up. You're in pain. We're gonna go get a wheelchair." So we're at the zoo and they got me a wheelchair. And so there's quite a few photos of me in this wheelchair. And my son was having a blast. We were going up to where it kind of sloped down to go to the next place, and he just kind of pushed me and let me keep going. And I was like, "Hey guys, come on, this is somebody come get me. I'm going down a hill." And so I think sometimes we just tried to make light of things and have fun despite what was going on. And now that they're older, they've told me, yes, how worried they've been over the years, but we tried to make light as much as we could.
Yeah, no, for sure. And now just jumping, you mentioned this a little bit earlier at the beginning, but you have your own podcast and you have your own social media page. And so what made you want to start advocating and start that all up?
Oh, yeah. So in probably around 2020, I had started a separate Instagram. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it, but I met a girl named Chelsea that is a professional dancer in New York City, and she ran a podcast called My Immune System Hates Me. And I came across her because of another account that I followed that had been on her podcast. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love these people. These people are amazing." And Chelsea also ran a support group every Thursday. So I joined the support group, and we all got to be really good friends. There was a good core 5 to 8 of us that would meet every Thursday. And several of them had also been on her podcast. And we loved talking about what we were going through. And it was all a group, mostly that we all had RA. And so we could talk about medications, bounce ideas off of each other. It was fabulous. Well, in 2022, Chelsea decided, her life was getting kind of back to normal again, and she didn't have as much time, and so she decided to close down the podcast. And I'd always joked around with her and others about doing one, but several people encouraged me to start one up. And so I created My Spoonie Sisters, and it kind of turned into a community as well. There's an Etsy shop. People are trying to get me to be more on YouTube. I'm trying. It's not my thing, but trying to get it on YouTube as well. But that's kind of how the whole thing started. And it was about, highlighting people going through similar things. And it has been a blast. I've met so many amazing people, and I love sharing stories of what the people do and live with and how they persevere.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then my last question for you today is if anyone is starting their health journey or they're in the thick of either getting diagnosed or they're just in the thick of a flare or something like that, do you have any words of encouragement or advice? Could be related to your conditions in particular, or just in general?
I tell most people pretty much the same thing. Uh, doesn't matter if they have what I have or something else, but I always tell them, I understand that you're struggling. I understand you're hurting, whether it be physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever it is, you are hurting. but be careful not to get stuck in that because your life is still worth living. It's just going to look a little different,
Mhm.
and that's okay. Because but you matter, you're enough, you are valuable. And so you need to try to find your own way of living your best life despite what you're going through. And so don't be afraid to talk to people and reach out and ask for advice on things they've tried or done and what has helped them. We're not all the same, but I will take everyone's recommendations in a heartbeat and I will try every single one of them because if 10 things are recommended, maybe 2 will work. And
Mhm.
so find your people that want to listen to you, find your people that want to recommend you, but don't get stuck mourning the life you once had
Mhm.
because this life is still beautiful.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, I do want to say, where can everybody find you on Instagram once again?
Oh, yes. Okay. So my main account is gracefully_Jen, or of course there's the podcast and it's My Spoonie Sisters. So yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. And I really hope to have you over on My Spoonie Sisters as well.